I was watching faces, and it just, my heart is filled with joy, all of ours, to see your faces. I need you all to know that you are never far from our thoughts, especially now. We are here for you, but we respect the demands being placed on you right now. We get it. None of us signed up for a global pandemic. I think we can all agree with that. But you know what? We're doing what educators do. We're being gap standers. We're getting in the way, in front of those gaps, to serve these kids that we love, and these teachers and these communities. So we don't want to just begin a session on building your CIP and pretend that everything is normal, because we know it's not. We're not going to pretend that things are normal and that this is just a regular school year writing a regular CIP. I think, I'm looking at your faces, I think we would all agree that we are in varying levels of okayness. Am I right? Like, we're not exactly okay, and we embrace that, and we know more than ever we have to lean in on each other. And so please know this team is here for you. We also know that writing your ACIP may not be in the top 10 things you're wanting to do right now. We also get that, but we know it's something that we have to do. As CSI schools receiving funding, this is expected and required that we have a working plan. So we thought, how can we come together as a group to say, how can we give you some direction, tips, with all things considered? How can we create a plan that is representative of the reality of education today, and try to not just streamline this process, but make this a workable, palatable, accessible plan for you. So thank you all for joining, and please know, if you got any wonders, please put that in the chat. Ms. Lowry, if you could go to the next slide. Just a couple reminders. It's helpful if you have access to last year's ACIP, whether it's a digital or hard copy. If you have not seen a link in the chat, there's a place for you to register your attendance.
I still can't hear.
You having trouble hearing? I'm gonna let my friends take care of that. And I said, I'm gonna let some other friends in the waiting room. The link in the chat should take you to a Google Doc of sorts, and you just write your name. I think Ms. Lowry put an example in one of the boxes. Ms. Lowry, did you think you want to add about that attendance sheet before I move on?
No, I just want to remind everybody to please go into that Google Doc. It'll give the instruction, or give the course number if you're looking for CEU credit, and you will also please be sure to put in whatever your power school. That's how you need to sign in, because I can't match you up if you don't match up to the power school.
Oh.
So the registration link is...
I can hear now. I'm not.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lowry.
Any other questions? I see several people putting it in the chat, but you need to go over to the document, and that link's been put in there several times. Put it in the chat. It's not going to be the place that'll help you.
Yes, thank you. The session has been recorded, so if you've just joined us and you had some colleagues that could not, we'll share the link immediately. As soon as we have the link, we will send this to you. A copy of this presentation is in a folder. There's a link Ms. Lowry has been sharing, and we will continue. We've been in 100 Zooms before too, so we will continue putting that link in the chat in case it gets lost in the chat. Please be monitoring the chat for the links and other information we'll be sharing. Just some basic, we have a slide just about norms. I feel at this point in the pandemic, we don't have to say a lot about virtual meeting norms. So if Ms. Lowry, you could move to the next slide. Please know this is a place of fellowship, that we want to always assume positive intent, and we want to seek clarification, but most importantly, we want to give you a place to communicate, to connect, and to fellowship. Please use the chat feature for any questions you have. I also feel like we don't have to say that anymore, but please keep your microphone muted when not speaking. And if you're a tweeter, we would love to hear more about your learning and share that, and you can use these hashtags or these Twitter accounts. Alabama Achieves is the State Department account, and of course our Twitter is ALSDE-OSL. Just kind of moving ahead to the next slide, we've really tried to be very mindful of the time we have together and what you need now. And we totally created this presentation around your response to the registration. So we're looking at reflecting on what we did last year, which looks a lot different than what we're talking about this year. Really projecting needs moving forward, trying to, we talk about the importance of a data-driven ACIP, and that is really different, and perhaps we have to look at it a very different way when we don't have that spring assessment data that we're so accustomed to using. And then really navigating the platform. So I've got some tips and some shortcuts I'm going to share with you to hopefully help that process go a lot smoother. Just so you can see my other teammates in the room, we all have a background with our school improvement logo. So if you look in the sea of beautiful faces, you will see my three colleagues. I'm Melissa Shields, and I often say I lead this Office of School Improvement, but I am led. I am led every day by these three wonderful ladies and each one of you. So if you look around, I've asked them to maybe put a hand up in the screen, but everyone will be speaking today, and you'll get to know them a little bit better. With that, I think I'm going to pass the virtual torch over to my colleague, Dr. Anderson. Thanks again for coming.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Karen Anderson, and we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of setting the stage for writing your ACIP. Winston Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." The pandemic certainly caused a powerful pause to occur that forced us to reflect really about everything: how students learn, our instructional practices, what school really looks like, whether we're in a brick and mortar building or a virtual school. Let's take some time and think about last year, both pre-pandemic and now, and prepare to project what our students, staff, parents, and community really need as we develop an ACIP in a pandemic world. Next slide, please. So as you're reflecting, I thought it might be helpful for us to think about spring cleaning. So some things really do just get cleaned up. They just need a little elbow grease and they're good to go. Some things really get thrown out. I think about a dress I have not worn in years because I will never be that size again. Just needs to go. And some things are just brand new. Next, please. So what we will do is conduct an educational garage sale. So as we're thinking now, as I'm talking, just make a list of the various practices or habits, procedures that go on in your school right now. The schedules, the ceremonies, things like students walk on the right side of the hall on the yellow line. Think of the teachers who have to have their planning during the last period of the day. Things like that. Reflect on what's currently going on. And then we're gonna talk about how to follow through. Next slide. These are the different stations that we'll discuss as you sort the different practices and policies and procedures. The museum, not for sale, repair shop, garbage can, and toxic waste can. So to begin, we'll talk about the museum. There are some things that have just served the school well, but it's just time for them to really retire. For example, perhaps your seniors are used to taking some sort of senior trip. But now that's no longer possible due to the expense and potential liability. So that's just a wonderful practice. We did it once upon a time. We will always remember when, but that's just not going to happen anymore. Next slide. Some practices are just as precious as our pearls. They are not for sale. For example, one principal I know found it super helpful to have their Zoom leadership team meetings on Friday afternoons. That was a time where they could all just kind of reflect and they could all just kind of come together. That's something that's new, but it's going to persist in times to come. I know as a principal, once we got that bus pickup and drop off procedure just right, I would not change it if you paid me money. It's just something that we're going to keep forever. So think of those kinds of practices. There are other practices that really need to be repaired. They're really okay, but as time goes on, they just need to be adjusted. For example, everyone has had to repair their graduation traditions because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to gather together in large groups and celebrate the way we normally would, so we've been real creative, having drive-through or drive-by graduation ceremonies. So those are aspects of our school that really have needed some improvement. And let's face it, there are some things we do that just need to go. Maybe there's a program that one person in the entire school uses, sometimes for a few students. Is that really worth your time? And can you guarantee that you're getting some bang for that buck? Who's being impacted by that program? Just discontinue, it's time to go. And then finally, there are some practices that need to go but need to be handled with care. You know, if they stay, they could do real damage. But you have to really think carefully about how to let them go. One thing we've learned during the pandemic is we learned more about our grading practices. And I know that it's really been a sensitive topic to give zeros. Well, if a student wasn't there and a student didn't turn in the work, they should get a 0. Well, we found during the pandemic that maybe the student wasn't there because they were monitoring little cousin and little sister. Maybe they were working. Maybe they weren't feeling well themselves. So giving zeros in the absence of a complete picture just won't do. So that's really a practice that needs to go, but we will discard it carefully. So the next thing we will do is to sort different practices into these different stations. Now, if we were all together face to face, everyone would have a plethora of sticky notes. There would be a sheet of chart paper with each one of those stations listed. You would take one sticky note for each practice and place it in the appropriate category. So we found a virtual way to do this. So on the next slide, you will see a virtual corkboard. Think of that as your chart paper. Once you click a link to each one of these stations, and mind you, the links are also in the chat. Once you get to a particular station, grab a sticky note and type very quickly what that practice is. You can use the link in the chat. You can use the QR code. You can use the link. So this entire page is actually in a handout that I know that you have a link to virtually. But I want us to take just about 5 minutes and go to as many of those rooms as you need to. And for example, if you get to the garbage can corkboard, take a sticky note and jot down a practice, a procedure, a policy that is going to be thrown in the trash. So here's an example. This is the garbage can corkboard or the garbage can chart paper. So pick up a sticky note of your choice and type on zeros, no more zeros. And just click post at the bottom and there it will be. So we'd love to take about 5 minutes for everyone to go to the room or the station of your choice. Grab a sticky note and be sure your sticky note reflects the room you're in. Toxic waste, repair shop, something that needs to be fixed, not for sale, museum, or garbage can. So we'll go ahead and set our timer for 5 minutes. So please take 5 minutes and share your procedures with us.
this might be a good time to remind everybody that I know might be having to multitask, that if things are going on in your school and you have to step away, it will be recorded and we'll make sure that you get all materials.
Hello, Miss Laurie. The museum is the only one that's working for me so far. I couldn't get on garbage can or repair shop.
Well, here, let's see, not for sales picked up, garbage can. I don't know if it's being blocked in your group. If you can't get on and you want to put it in the chat, I'll be glad to add it for you later, because we are going to take a screenshot of these once we kind of organize what your thoughts were as a group and send them out. So if you can't, just put it in the chat. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Actually, I gotta. Dr. Shields, could you go into the registration link and take the names out of number 6, because we were running out of room and I duplicated it?
Gotta say, the toxic waste board might be my favorite. You guys are on it.
Well, I did it, but it wiped out everybody's.
Please know also there's room further down on the board if it seems everything is cluttered together. If you'll kind of scroll down or to one side or another, you'll find more room. We've got about 2 minutes left. I began the timer a little late, so about 2 minutes left to finish up.
See, I haven't been to toxic waste yet. I love the way you guys are filling in. Thank you so much. Sorry for those that can't, but we will be glad to put that in for you at a later point.
One of the things I love about using these virtual court boards is, well, it's free. That's always one. This is a great formative assessment tool for teachers, but you actually can, and we're going to do that for you, like Ms. Lowry said. We're going to send you screenshots. We're going to go through each one of these, and we can move your Post-it notes by like themes. So a lot of themes emerge in each one of these. So if this is a new tool to you, it's something I've used for years. It's not a new tool at all. But in light of everything going on, it's a really great tool for feedback and formative assessment.
And we were hoping that we could share something that you could take back and use as well. And if there's anything about it that you don't understand, be sure and contact one of us and we'll be glad to help you.
About 30 seconds left.
Oh, that's a good one, sabotagers.
All righty, our time is up. Now, again, if we were face-to-face, if we were all in one big room together, we would do a gallery walk. And as Dr. Shields said earlier, we would organize your sticky notes according to theme, according to groups. We could see some themes and trends and some commonalities. There's so many interesting things that you've noted. Thank you for posting. Thank you for being so thoughtful. But as you're coming back and you finish posting, you know, you're think about practices that are non-negotiables. How has remote instruction during the pandemic revealed the practicality of some practices or procedures? And as Dr. Shields said, we will share the cork boards. We will email those to you, or we will have those available in a folder that you will have a link to, and it will be grouped together. So at this point in time, what we will do is to break you out into Zoom rooms, into breakout rooms. So I hope you've had an opportunity to look and share as you were in the different rooms, but we would like for you to concentrate on two particular areas. Think about the practices and the policies that are just as precious as your pearls, those not for sale practices. Think of those, and maybe you saw some as you went to that particular cork board. Think of those. And also we'd like you to focus on those practices and policies that were in the repair shop. Some that were working pretty well, but just need a little bit of improvement, need some tweaking, need some adjustment. We would like for you to think about what falls into those two categories specifically: your not for sale practices and your repair practices. So as you go into your breakout rooms, we're going to ask you to talk about those two practices. While you're in those rooms also, if you would identify a recorder to sort of summarize your conversation in just maybe a couple of sentences, you can just get someone who will be a volunteer, or you can volunteer someone, or the youngest educator in the room. But very quickly find someone to be the recorder to kind of summarize your conversation. And when we come back together, you'll have about 8 minutes together in your room to discuss. But when we come back, whoever has been the designated recorder, if you will please just type a sentence or two in the chat to summarize your discussion. So you'll be going into breakout rooms here in just a moment. You'll have about 8 minutes to work. And once you're there, identify the youngest educator to be the recorder, have your discussion, and the recorder, when we come back, will summarize your discussion in about a sentence or two. Thank you very much. Enjoy your time.
Welcome back. I'm sure all of you had some powerful conversations. I know the group I was in room 25. We had some great conversations, and they came up with some really good things about what they're going to keep and some things they might need to repair. If you would like, make sure that you have, you got your report, and they were able to put the summary of what happened in your break room in the chat. If we could get maybe a couple of people who might, for a minute or two, just share out what happened in your break room. If you just raise your hand, Dr. Shields or Ms. Lowry will unmute you so that you can share what happened in your break room, in your breakout rooms. And we'd all have to raise our hands at once. So just wave your hand or unmute your mic if you'd like to speak.
All right, Dwight Brooks from Danley Elementary, Montgomery Public Schools. We are in the keep. We want to continue to identify struggling students, meet them where they are. We can meet them for theirs and get them there to be successful through an RTI process. They also want to keep differentiated lesson plans, but it also came into where it's a repair in which getting the lesson plans formats, some of them were too vague, some of them were just too much. We had a participant that talked about how they reflected on their lesson plans at the end of the week. It worked good for math and ELA to decide what worked, what didn't work, how could they have more success. Another thing that we wanted to keep was highly qualified and effective teachers. The ones who foster good student engagement and produce also the ones who produce good data. We also like to repair some teachers.
Okay.
The ones that are ineffective and this needs some extra PD and some extra support throughout the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dwight. Good to see you.
Same here.
Anyone else? Very briefly.
Okay, Norman Williams, Macon County Schools.
Hey, Williams.
Hey there. Repair shop, we spoke of the culture piece, teaching and learning, the educational gaps, which falls in the area of the loss, attendance, parental involvement, and in-person visits that are not going to happen. However, we know they have to happen virtually because we're not, our students are not on campus. What's not for sale for us is the shared leadership piece in our group, brother. The teaching and learning, the school culture, as well as the parental engagement.
Oh, it sounds like you all had some awesome conversations. I know in our group it came up about strategic teaching.
Yeah.
We talked about special. One person mentioned something they had going on with special ed and collaborative teaching that they were not willing to give up. Someone mentioned funding and Marzano. So it sounds like we had some great conversations. Thank you so very much. And just again, when we go back and you all can look at the court boards, you'll see other things that other people have decided they want to keep and or repair. Meg, if you would. Now, what we're going to talk about, now that you've talked about those things that you want to keep and those things that might need to be added, what will be our next steps? What do we need to go when we get back to our buildings or get back with our teachers to discuss these kinds of things? If you're going, next slide, Meg. So when we look at those precious pearls, those things that you talked about that are not for sale, what we want you to do once you get back, they're great things, but we want you to look at how are they impacting instruction and how do you know? Again, how are they impacting student learning and how do you know? What data do you have to support that those things are working? If it's attendance, how is your attendance improving? If it's reading, what's your data telling you? I know we didn't have anything from this spring to look at to determine formally what that growth would be, but you did have Scantron, you have teacher assessments. So use the data that you do have to determine if there was any impact from that not for sale, because a lot of times we think things are really, really working, but when we look at the data, it may not be working as well as we think. Okay, next slide if you would, Matt. Now those repair things, and I know all of us have seen this before. We go into these car shop and we say, well, what's wrong with it? We don't know. And they have to diagnose it and find out for us. So I think Mr. Brooks mentioned about teachers. If that one teacher is not implementing that particular strategy, what are we going to do to support them? We just can't throw them out, the baby out with the dishwater. We may have to add a little bit more water, a little bit more soap to support that person and making sure that they're implementing. And then there too, how do you know it's not working? Has there been any monitoring of that particular strategy to see how it's working or not working? How can we fix it? Determine how can it be fixed, and to kind of devise a plan for fixing that, or a timeline for working with that particular person that's not going to, that's not doing what you need them to do. Sure, we're always going to have that one or two that, you know, just will not fall into line, but we have to kind of massage them a little bit as much as we can, give them the support that they need so that we can repair those things that need to be repaired. Now, everybody likes, I don't know if anybody even wears these kind of shoes anymore, but everybody likes a brand new pair of shoes when school starts. Everybody likes to be clean and matching. So if you add something new, and we know in the pandemic world, we're gonna have to add a whole lot of platforms, learning platforms. We're gonna have to look at technology. Our teachers are gonna have to be trained on those things. And please don't forget about the social, emotional aspect of our kids because they're suffering. So please take a look at those new things that we have to add and make sure they align with those things that are not for sale and those things that need repairing. Just don't throw something out just out of the air. Make sure that all of these things work for one common good. And that common good, as we all know, is student assessment and student learning and improving instruction. So with that being said, we're going to look at those things that are not for sale and see what you're using based on the data. We're going to repair those things, support those folks that need to be supported with implementation, whether it's a program, whether it's strategic teaching, whether it's a special ed and general ed teachers collaborating, whatever those things are, we want to make sure that we can repair those things. If it's brand new, please provide the training that the teachers need in order to implement those new things. Thank you.
Okay, hey, this is Meg. Now it's my turn. I'm having such a good time reading what's in the chat. I'm kind of got my head on swivel here looking at it all. If you've not already, and I think most of you have done an excellent job, I had to go in during the breakout rooms and make another sheet, but put your name in the chat. I'm sorry, in the link. There's a link to where you will record your attendance, and I please put it in the way that you would have it in PowerSchool so that I can match you up if you're interested in continuing education credit. It's in there a bunch of times. Here's all of the information. We won't be closing it out just today. So when you download this, and you might still need to register, all the information you need is on this slide. So we're going to talk about now about developing your ACIP, and we kind of been thinking about what you may have and not have. But the bottom line with data, and I think we all feel this way, a little lighthearted look of, before I put my name down there or put my data down there, tell me how you're going to use it. So I thought maybe this would just lighten our mood a little bit, because I think all of us find ourselves in this position as we look at our schools. What we want to do is turn the data into information, and the information into insight about our schools, about our families, about our kids. Is not just a number. We can kind of make the numbers do what we want them to, but what is it about the numbers that we need to know about our staff in this time and our students? I mean, these, pandemic times are putting a lot of stress on a lot of people. So here's the information questions, not just to read them to you, but you got to know, back to the garage sale, what are you where you want to be? How are you going to get there? What is it you're going to use to monitor that progress? And the big key, what about that evaluation? Because a lot of the things that you will choose this time might not be things that you've chosen before as far as the evaluation process. So you've had a lot of data, and we're going to talk about some data that you might not have looked at before, but you're going to have to figure out what's most important to guide continuous improvement. And frankly, what does continuous improvement mean for your school? For some people, it may be straight achievement. For other people, it may be attendance or discipline issues. But more than anything else, bullet number 3, we got to focus on growth for our kids. And data is also more than just a test score. This was in the chat a moment ago. Multiple measures of data is actually what you're going to do. Somebody made that point, that it's often not just one thing. It is how those things work together for you to get a picture of your school. So we're going to talk about that in the upcoming slides. And this is my reminder slide to say, I know there are people on here that aren't CSI schools, but since that is the focus of what those of us on here, the 4 of us, we want to remind you to make sure in your ACIP that you identify those report card indicators. And we've got your measurements, and you guys know this, but this is the idea of what are the metrics, not only how you're going to measure, but what's that expectation of that level of measurement going to be. Now, this is the slide that I think is rich in information. Guys, you don't have your spring student achievement scores. And I know that's caused a lot of stress because we saw in our form how you guys answered. But when we got to looking at it and talking as a group, there are a lot of other data sources available to you. Student learning, okay, you don't have spring assessment, but you're going to have the interim assessments that you're going to start giving when the kids get back, or they possibly made doing them online. You're going to have work samples. Your teachers are going to have assessments. You can decide what's the type and frequency, and maybe just how you're going to do that in a virtual platform. And moving over to the right, what about your demographics? What's your school location and size? There's a lot of information in your characteristics of your IEP, of the number of IEPs, the number of students in poverty. And another big one is your staff characteristics. Now, we've got attendance, experience, turnover. These are lots of times this is a lot of information that sometimes is very relevant to our CSI schools. So maybe this is a strong data point. Your school processes. What's your instruction? What's your instruction in a pandemic world going to be? What a great ACIP objective that would be. You've got curriculum and instruction. I really don't want to read to everybody, but you can see how it works its way around. This is a lot of information that is not touching student achievement data from the spring. How about perceptions? I'm going to show you a slide in a moment that really touched me that has a lot to do with perceptions. But you've got the surveys that you have to send out every year as part of your Cognia. You've got self-assessment tools that you can use with your kids. We've worked with Dr. Reeves. I think some of you saw him earlier. And his idea about doing those assessments, kind of a 3-column thing. What does a kid think they did? How do they do? How do they think they did? A lot of ways to look at that data that the students are going to get in their assessments. And then I think perception's a really big deal right now with social media and everybody have an opinion and putting those opinions out there about your schools and your teachers. So I think this is a slide that you really, if you stop and think, it was an aha for me to say, wait, we still can use these other measurements. So that's of course in your downloadable PDF. I just wanted to mention that Scantron has a product called Quizzes for All because there's not a lot of other assessments there is in the K3. I understand that. So this slide is kind of maybe meant for those 4th grade and up people that are looking for some sort of quantitative data. But I think we got to be real careful in a pandemic of just quantitative and not having a lot of qualitative data. This again is just more information, and they put out a new email blast about how to test from home. I think this is a really powerful slide, especially right now. I think of the littles that are going to schools where they hadn't been to school, or they hadn't been to that school, or they haven't met their teacher. We've got to remember, you can't teach me if you don't know me, and leaders, you can't lead me if you don't know me either. So I think that's kind of, I see a lot of things posted about giving grace to one another and giving understanding. I think that's a large part of the data. This was a slide that a couple of us had seen before. How about this for your perception and just raw data? Your Monday morning staff check-in, the link is here in the bottom, but this is what it looks like. Are you doing well? How do you feel good? Do you feel good about our plan for the week? We're doing okay. Somebody in my house is sick. Call me, I need something. You know, you can figure out this is simply a Google form. The questions were put in the Google form. And then when they are submitted, and if you all know, if you've used Google Forms, you can go over and you see the responses, but you can make an Excel spreadsheet. So what this particular school did, these were originally in other colors, like a yellow, help, I need help. So these were, the ones were coded yellow. And when the principal took this on for herself, and after she was able to look these over, she was able to turn them into green, meaning I touched that person. I could have fixed the problem, but I certainly could say, hey, I care about you. And you know, this is the least I can do is call and see how you're doing. So I think this was just really powerful. And y'all, it's data. It's different data, but it's really, really good data. And I think sometimes our teachers, from what I can tell, my sister's a teacher, my friends are teachers, they're overwhelmed. I think we're all overwhelmed, but this puts it in a way, I might say I'm overwhelmed, but like, I'm okay, I'm gonna get through it. But somebody else, maybe a young teacher, an early in their career teacher, is just like, nah, I'm not making it very well at all. Please come check on me. So I thought that was a really good slide. And here's another one I thought was just as powerful, the idea of doing a Family Friday check-in. How about our schools? I noticed, I've got some data from my sister's classroom, and now where she's teaching has gone to the kids that have returned to school are over 75% free and reduced lunch. And I know a lot of you face numbers that are much higher than that, but in her school, that is totally different than what she normally sees each year in a classroom. So what it kind of said to me is kids are coming to school because they're hungry. They're coming to school to be able to see other people, and they need a safe space. I saw another report that said that reports of child abuse were down. Folks, that doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means those of us that are reporters of it, our mandated reporters, are not there to report it. So I think family check-ins is just so powerful to me. Our family's okay, we're healthy, we're stir crazy. I would be in that category. We're sick, we need help, we need food and supplies. Again, powerful, powerful SEL stuff, SEL information that we can make a difference. If you see something on here, there's usually somebody in a community to be able to say, I can help. You know, how can I help? This again, I was going to make sure that everybody heard how many times that you could sign in. And guys, if you can't get something to work, put it in the chat. I'll go back through it. It's going to take longer to get credit, but just do what you can do. But the sign-in sheets are there. The big thing is match your name with your Power School sign-in. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Shields.
I'm so involved in the chat right now, and I'm like, oh, my turn's up. This conversation about trauma-informed instruction and social-emotional learning, I mean, it extends to us as adults as well. And I saw a lot of shaking heads when Ms. Lowry was speaking. I think that's just such a powerful activity. So listen, I want to get to kind of the nitty-gritty about, let's talk about our plan, now what we have to do. So we've simplified some things for you, and especially as you turn this around to your team, because I know some of you are, you know, just the building principals that could attend and the rest of the team could not. So we tried to create a presentation that would be very palatable for you to turn around to your school or your district. We think that activity with the garage sale is just an awesome activity to do in your schools, to have everybody, whether they are certificated or not, to be a part of that conversation. But as we are looking at this, you know, here we are in our second year of using eProof, so there's that. Just remind ourselves, there's so much that we have to do right now. And so let's keep in mind that this is a school improvement plan. This is not an operation plan. It's better, my favorite quote, and I say this to myself all the time, and I know so many of you, and you've heard me say this, but we don't need to do more in education. Let that sink in for just a second. We need to do less with greater focus. Can I get an amen? Because we are pulled in so many directions. Let's really keep our focus. So it's better to implement a handful of those evidence-based strategies than to try to do everything at once. You know, a lot of bite-sized professional learning and a lot of bite-sized implementation. So be careful not to turn this into like an everything agenda and really focus on a student achievement and just student outcomes, because it's so much more than how they're doing academically. All of these other things certainly affect how our students do academically. So Ms. Lowry, if you could go to the next slide. You've seen this 1,000 times, but just in case any of you are new to the lovely world of writing a continuous improvement plan, and all of us have been that person that's been voluntold by a principal, you are so wonderful that we would like you to lead our school improvement plan. I've been there as a classroom teacher, I've been there as administrator, and you want these plans to mean something. So you know what, especially now. So really keeping those goals, now we call them strategic themes, few in number, no more than 3 to 5, really be ambitious, but certainly achievable. And it's not just on increasing student learning, it's about changing grown-up practices too. And that's from classroom teacher to leaders in the school and in the district. And it should, our plans, and this is not new, they shouldn't just address your at-risk students, your subgroups. They should, but what are we doing for our college-bound students? What are we doing for all students when a CIP is totally focused on those at risk? What message are we saying? So looking at your plans and how we can really focus on the work with our students. Next slide, Ms. Lowry. So I think I already mentioned this about, looking at those adult actions and those action steps or incremental tasks, but can I hang my hat for just a second on that next, or those last two bullets? It's been a while since we've used the CIP box. I don't know if I got any oldies in the room with me, but everybody remember those classroom CIP boxes, and teachers would decorate them, and when you walk in a classroom, they were so excited to show you their box. Evidence that we're looking for about the efficacy of a plan should be observable in a classroom, even in absence of the teacher and the kids being in that room. Would you agree? That we can walk into a classroom and we can see good practices happening, even if there's not a body in there. So, when I used to do instructional rounds at the district level and someone said, oh, she's out today, or they're at lunch, I'm like, I got this. I want to walk through. I just want to see this room. I want to see the learning that has been happening. So really looking for evidence that is observable. I challenge each of us when we are writing, and I did this too, when I was writing or developing those CIPs, those strategies, those action steps, y'all, those were my look-fors when I did instructional rounds. That makes it real, right? I'm not looking for arbitrary, these are best practices. I'm looking for the things that the team and I developed as this is what's good for my school. And it should involve more than just math and language arts. We all remember the No Child Left Behind, and so many of our CIPs were just reading and math. Remember that? You got a reading goal, you got a math goal, you got a special ed goal, or you got a subgroup goal. Can I challenge you to think outside the box there? Because when you say it's a reading goal, that infers it falls on whose shoulder? That right? I saw Dr. Cassie, the reading teacher. Literacy is everybody. And without opening up another can of worms, we're going to be taking maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, assessments in the spring. And the ACT, ACIP have constructive writing responses, correct? We're going to be exposed, y'all, for the Great Depression of writing instruction that we have had in our state. So it's so important that when we're talking about literacy, we're talking about all in. We're talking about math. We're talking about strategy. So you go to the next slide. Thank you for the amens. I see those coming in the chat. I'm asked all the time, hey, Melissa, I love you. Can you please just send me a copy of a good CIP? Just I want to see one, because that's how we act as teachers, right? Give us a model, and I promise mine will be better, but give me an idea of what you're looking for or what is a good plan. So y'all, this is nothing prescriptive. I'm not saying what you see, like this is the way to do it. But what I've done is I've looked at a number of CIPs throughout the state, and I wanted to share with you what some other schools have done. So for example, if you looked at the purple, these are your 3 strategic themes. You got learning supports, where this is where you get into safety. Notice safety's first, because that's the thing we're all talking about right now. Attendance, these are just specific things that could come or could fall under that. I'm not saying they all should. Literacy, this is when I get into strategies, professional learning, technology. You need to identify your subgroups. What are you doing with your special ed? What are you doing with your English learners? When you have a special ed goal and an English learner goal by itself, once again, I'm asking you, what is that saying? So think about how you can fold those strategies for your subgroup into your existing themes. And of course, math in the same respect. Here's another example. You got your 3 strategic themes. You got student achievement. So I'm really focused on the core areas in student achievement. Get into those electives too. I can have a theme about learning supports. Once again, safety. I'm looking at chronic absence. I'm looking at discipline, social emotional learning. All of us are working with these school-based mental health coordinators. This is a great opportunity to fold that in. Are you partnering with A+ College Ready? Are you doing dual enrollment? Thinking about what we're doing for our students preparing for college and career. Professional learning. What are you doing in terms of remote instruction, PLCs, instructional rounds, pineapple charts? If you're not familiar with those, Google them, you'll thank me later. Making sure that you're addressing subgroups and technology. I see a whole bunch of friends in this room that have gone through the Turnaround Academy. So if you're not familiar with the language in that last column, those of you that have gone through the Transformation Academy are very familiar with the 4 domains for rapid school improvement and had gone through considerable professional learning of your own. So many schools that have participated in that said, you know, those are going to be our themes, and we're going to fold our work in that. This is the one thing I think you care about most, and having done many CIP trainings over the last couple weeks, and looking at the reflections, you're like, everything you said was pretty good, but this is what I really needed to know. So if you're trying to figure out, you did your eProve, your plan last year, and you put a lot of work into it, and let's keep it real. We were all trying to work on our eProve plans in the fall last year because we were just getting all trained up, right? So we were just like, okay, let's get this sucker done. Let's do what we got to do. So let's, you know, there's that. And so now you want to not just go into your plan and edit it. And this is for all of the CSI schools. This is really, really important. We don't want you to go into your old plan and just go in and edit and change things. I know that's what we did with ACIP before. What we want you to go is to, what we want you to do is to go into your plan, into your eProve, and I want you to click these 3 little ellipses or these 3 dots, and you're going to see a click copy option. When you do that, you will have an opportunity to rename it. It'll look a little bit like this. Now, this is where it's important. There's a box for you to click that says check this box to include, you know, your executive summary. I think we call it the vision, the mission, the belief statements. So all of that stuff that you did last year will come over to the new year. And that way you can have a 1920 plan that still sits by itself. And then you can have a 2021 plan. You can still go in and edit it. You can move things around. You can, and I certainly hope you would, in light of, we were trying to write these quickly and we're also in the middle of a pandemic. But I wanted, if you had not seen how to do this, I wanted to make sure that at least I shared a screenshot of that with you. Next slide, Ms. Lowry. I debated on even sharing this, but I felt like I kind of had to, considering that everything kind of went a little crazy in March. So we were doing the envisioning and planning, many of you, I can't speak for every school, we're doing those kind of together because we were getting trained up on how to use eProve and the cognitive platform. So those two kind of came tandem. And we were smack in the middle of implementing, right? You know, here we are kind of on the end of it in March, about to have conversations perhaps about talking about our plan moving forward. So I'm guessing many of you did not get to the evaluation piece, and I need you to know that's okay. We get that, we totally get that. So that said, these are the 4 phases in eProve when you go into the platform as you see them. And so moving forward this year, I hope, fingers crossed, that we will have a better opportunity to be more a part of that evaluation phase. Ms. Lowry, could you go back a slide? I have someone asking to show how to copy again. So you go into your platform and you're going to see where you created your plan from before. And you click on the little 3 dots or ellipses or whatever it's called and click copy. You're going to have several options. And then when you get that, you're going to get a screen that looks like this. Just make sure you click the checkbox. Yes, and this presentation and these screenshots are also in the drive. Thank you, Meg. You can skip a couple slides in. This is, this is me, and so I know what helps me, and having worked with so many of you, I know what helps you. I like to really work with my team and develop the plan before I actually go into the platform and write it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to have it maybe like in a Word document or a Google Doc where we're really looking at it. And then it makes it really easy to go into the cognitive platform and copy and paste that language. So this is a link to it's just a nerdy Google Doc that really lays out the structure of eProve, of the ACIP plan. How we start with that theme, and then you write the priority statements. Just remember, your priority statements are supposed to be if then I do this, then this happens. So I provided examples of that, and the link and everything is provided in this slideshow. If you're new to eProof, but we're familiar with ACIP before, in Assist, some of the language has changed. For example, goals and strategies are now considered critical initiatives. There's some language that has stayed the same, but this is really just a glossary. If you're like, well, we didn't call it that before. This is just a snippet of some of the changes. This is gold. So my colleague, Dr. Killingsworth, I think I saw her in here a moment ago, and I worked with Cognia we show us everything that a CSI school, and if you work with ATSI schools, I need to say they are explicitly addressed in this. This is a 14-minute video that demonstrates each piece of the strategy section in eProof. It actually goes through, click here. If you're a CSI school, please make sure that you have identified those accountability pieces in the report card. Did you address academic achievement? Did you address academic growth? Did you address chronic absence? If you're a high school, graduation rate, your college readiness indicators, those sorts of things. If you have an EL population. So it really demonstrates each piece of the strategy, the actual CIP part of the Cognia platform. So instead of just sharing it with you during our session, so we'll just give you the link and you can work with your team, but it creates a great opportunity for you to see screenshots and step-by-step instructions if you're new to eProof, Cognia, or if you're like, it's been a year since I've touched it, I need a refresher course. On that note, I think the next slide shares some examples of what, if you're a Title I school, when I was working on CIPs at the school and the district level, I often used to tell the state, just tell me what I gotta do. And then, you know, if there's some things I can play with, and we'll talk about that, but tell me what is required of me. So there's a link at the bottom of this slide that you have access to. These are the required ACIP components for Title I school. What you have to do in eProof surveys, what you have to do in eProof diagnostics, what you have to do in eProof strategies. So there's no wondering, did I do everything I got to do? At the bottom of this, there's a little checklist. This is for you to say, okay, we did what we had to do. There's a lot of pieces to the Cognia platform, particularly on the front level when you're envisioning, that is not required for you to do. So it's just like we give teachers here's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great resources. So just because you see it in the platform doesn't necessarily mean that it's required content. So if you're in doubt, these are the required components for you as Title I schools. This is another link that Cognia has put together, Everything Alabama. So if you're at the district level and you're trying to figure out how to manage users, you're trying to look at how you respond to findings. These are just a series of links. And if you look at this little area that says recorded webinars, these are pretty short little 10 to 15-minute webinars or videos demoing how to use different pieces of the platform.
Melissa, this is also going to be in our folder of which they're going to have access to. This is actually a kind of a screenshot that I did so that everything would be in the one place. And also the Padlet, which they'll also see in a minute. Everything is in here. Should be your kind of one-stop shopping for anything Cognia in Alabama.
Thank you, Ed. Cognia has provided a, a Padlet with just tons of information. So we'll make sure that you have access to that as well. Some of it is more specific to district level folks, and then others to school level.
It's on the page right here. That'll be in the folder.
Yep.
So if they see one link, that'll go directly to it, but then they may see the entire link with everything. So a lot of different ways to get to the same place, but we wanted to make sure that you had what you needed.
Thank you. Something we're really excited about, just like you guys, we've been stretched over these last few months. We've totally thought about how we can support you differently. We want to be responsive to your needs, but we don't want to complicate the work that you're doing. And we know sometimes you got a bunch of State Department people in your building and you're wondering, okay, who do I have to be nice to? You know, who's the one who, we get that. We totally do. And we've been on the other side of that. So we've really come together to say, how can we provide just, once again, bite-sized opportunities for each of you to say, hey, I got wonders. And so something we're really excited about is this on the menu professional learning that we have just for you, where we're going to have a series of just kind of during lunch. So we're trying to do it during a time that is a little bit more accessible to you. We know many of you, we're getting your questions. How do I spend my CSI money? We get that all the time because of, you know, CARES Act and GEAR money and ESSER money, all these monies that you had thought you were going to spend on technology. Well, now, those funds have taken care of that. So now we're trying to be really creative, but thoughtful about the money that we have. So we're looking at some opportunities to be able to just us talk for maybe 5 or 10 minutes to scaffold that, provide resources and support. And beyond that, give you more opportunity to get into those Zoom rooms, to really let you connect with other principals, other school leaders, other teachers, other district level folks, to have those conversations, to grow in fellowship, but also just to grow in learning. So we see these being really short, but the focus will be on collaboration. So please, if you haven't had a chance yet, because I know we just put that up there, as soon as you can, please complete that, because we're not mind readers. You say that to your parents all the time, right? But tell us what you need, and I promise you we will make that happen. We're going to put a reflection link. Of course, here's a QR code on the slide, but we want to know, did we address your questions today? We tried to keep this really short. Did we cover our bases? What questions do you have left? There's a place for you to tell us hey, these are some conversations I'd like to have further. This means so much to us, because we tease all the time. When you work at the State Department, we know we walk into a school sometimes, and our role might be viewed differently than what our intent is. And so as we really work with schools, we say all the time, we're here to serve you. It's not the other way around, but we can only be as responsive to you as you are communicative to us. So really sharing with us the needs that you have. With that, this is a link I think Ms. Lowry has shared many times. You can't say we hadn't tried. In the chat, these are the links to the presentation today. You will notice in the presentation, all the links we shared are live links. So you should be able to click inside those slides to get the information you need. We are going to work on those garage sale virtual court boards and make sure that you have access to those, because I saw so many similar things. So we're really going to enjoy going through those. And then we'll share what we have. And those might be some great conversation starters for a follow-up. We just want to thank you. And I got to give a shout out to the team. We were really looking at time and trying to be really careful with our time. And I see we actually are finishing a few minutes early. We are going to stay online. We're not going anywhere. We are committed for the full hour and a half. If you have questions, we'd love to hear them. If you would like to unmute yourself, certainly please do and ask questions. We'd love to hear from you in the chat. But we thank you for letting us be part of this space that we know that you are all experiencing, and that you know what, we are all in this together, and know the State Department is behind you 100%. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Melissa, can I have a moment to show them the folder?
Please do.
Guys, this first on the presentation links, everything is in the folder. So if you go to that link, you will find there are other things back here that we want to talk about another time, but you have the presentation, the links, there's even a PDF. But the thing I wanted you to see, we talked about the Cognia links here. but our friends in federal programs were kind enough to put the regional assignments from federal programs in here, and also there's some information for the coronavirus, the CARES Act, and they've put that here in as well. And if we get enough requests for something else, we can always ask them. They've been a wonderful partner and are allowing us to build this